Hey everyone, it's Taylorverse, and today we are going to read Sin by Josephine Hart. I have a physical book this time, so y'all are just going to be looking at a picture of the cover of the book. There are many ways to have a deprived childhood. One of them is to be too lucky. This knowledge, times present, comes slowly. They say the veil that hides the future from us was woven by an angel of mercy. But what blinds us to our unpredictable past? Why are we hooded as we search amongst its ruins, trapped in the intricate web of motive and action? Novelists of our own lives, making ourselves up from bits of other people, using the dead and living to tell our tale, we tell tales. This is a tale, fragments from a life, from lives, particularly mine and hers. I never knew her, really. I came closest to her through her husband, the man with whom I now live, and through her son, whose name was Stephen, and through the lie. There were some, not many, whose world it was natural for me to enter, searching for a secret knowledge of her, and others peripheral figures on the outer edges of whose lives I waited, silent, hooded, hoping to trap some fleeting image that would light my path to her. Whenever I lost her, I slipped under the dark waters of my own life, tracing, from beneath the gloomy waves, the faint white glimmer of her soul. And when she hid from me, I sought her out. For I knew she hid only for her advantage later. Subtle, secret, opaque, I would crush her yet. Though she wounded me beyond pain, I too inflicted deep hurt. Not born to murder her, still I sought to break her. With a small silver hammer of exquisite design, I would seek to exact point at which even the gentlest pressure would smash the glass, and her substance would be mine. Sometimes it is in the split-second half-decision we nearly didn't make that we stumble by chance into ecstasy or despair. But chance did not bring her into my life. By grand design she waited for me, in my own home. She was my mother's first child. Shush. Though not her firstborn. A terrible injustice to me. Her name was Elizabeth Ashbridge, and I envied her that. There's something fluttering in my room. Black. Mama, Mama. Something black in my room. Black. With wings. Mama, Mama. Where are you, Mama? Oh, please, Mama. Come, Mama. Please, please. It will land on my face. I stumble to the door. I cannot reach the light switch. I am too small. Mama, I can't. Mama, Mama. Down the dark corridor. Black. Mama, it's coming after me. Oh, Mama. Where are you, Mama? I can't be near the back stairs. I stretch my arms. Oh, I must be near the back stairs. I stretch my arms, toes flexed, and still I cannot reach the light. Slowly, rail by rail, I reach to the banisters, and step by step descend into a further darkness. The back hall is so narrow. Arms outstretched, I can touch the walls. Wet face, stinging thighs, little drops of fear and shame. I stumble onward. Mama, Mama, I call out towards the blessed light. Mama! Her voice, singing softly to the sound of the radio in the background, floats towards me. At last I push the door, out of the darkness into the light, and they turn towards me. They are bathed in the light, a perfect trinity. My mother, brush in hand, is seated behind the kneeling Elizabeth, her golden hair spread out and down her back, a halo of light. My father, opposite Elizabeth, is bending, almost kneeling, arms outstretched, holding her cocoa. Perfect happiness, complete happiness, and I am outside the circle. My mother runs to me. She gathers me in her arms as Elizabeth calls, "Ruth, poor Ruth, you're crying." My father rises to me, whispering, "Darling Ruth, darling child, what is it? Oh, you must have come down the back stairs alone in the dark, you poor child." And they kiss me, they pet me, they hold me, and they try to soothe me. I am given Elizabeth's cocoa, and Elizabeth kisses me on my legs. "Poor, poor Ruth," she whispers. I start to cry again. Tears of hatred fall on Elizabeth's head, onto the golden hair. Then she turns her face up to me. I bend towards her. I brush my face across hers, and a tear drops into her mouth. Ew. Does it sting, Elizabeth? Does it sting? I am taken up to bed again. Through the main hall, lighted on my way. My mother is cooing as my father now carries me to my room. A search, oh so thorough, reveals no fluttering object, just a mobile half disconnected from its hook. My father sits with me and strokes my hair. My mother sings her soft song, and I drift off into sleep. A vision has been burnt into me, a vision of heaven. In darkness I gaze at the light in which I should have bathed alone. I now believe that I was exposed too early to goodness, and that I never recovered. Trapped in the fierce grasp of Elizabeth's kindness, aware constantly of the truthfulness of her gaze, I suffocated on the high thinness of the air around her. The corrosive power of her generosity killed, as they rose in me, my own small instincts towards goodness. It seemed to me that I came wrapped in a call of darkness and anger into Elizabeth's kingdom, for it was her kingdom, given to her out of love and pity. Orphaned at only 9 months, she was the child of my mother's sister Astrid and of Oliver Ord Ashford, young married lovers killed in a car crash. Elizabeth was taken to Lexington. Its old walls wove a stone sanctuary round her, and its famous gardens and lake gave to all her freedoms a restricted formal beauty. So she lived in Lexington, loved and cherished, a daughter for my parents, before me. Except I was their only daughter, a blood right, one they had taken from me. No one was to blame. They had done what was right and good. They had given a home to Elizabeth, my home, and they left me with the pain of something irretrievable, lost. I would be forever falsely the second. Not only the second, but one of a pair less valuable without the other. My mother and father were oblivious to the effect on me of their careful, equal love. On my mind's eye they painted pictures for me, of love and gentleness, pictures that I came to hate. My mother sighing during the careful plaiting of Elizabeth's long blonde hair, which took more time than the vigorous brushing of my short black curls. "There is a solution, Mamma," I wanted to cry. "Cut Elizabeth's hair, throw it away, burn it." But I said nothing, for in those days I learned patience, slow, hidden patience. My father kneeling again before Elizabeth as she sat sobbing on her bed on the day she left for boarding school, patting her hand to comfort her and whispering, "Oh, my golden girl, my golden light." "Stop painting these pictures for me," my heart cried. "Stop. You've never knelt to me, Papa. You've never knelt to me. She's not yours, Papa, she's not yours." They didn't stop. Still I see the sad way they gaze at me in the week after she left, when I copied little things I'd seen her do that had elicited praise. And I hear them sighing, "Ah, you miss her too, Ruth. I know, my dear, I know." I see my mother seated in front of the headmistress's desk, pleading with her to put us in the same house, a practice normally frowned upon at the school. It's essential to keep them close, less lonely for Ruth, who depends on Elizabeth so. 2 girls made my parents happy, Elizabeth and Ruth. The one following the other made the magic. A magic that Elizabeth created, encouraged, when small, to follow the sweetness of her behavior, to imitate her many acts of generosity, to note her kindness. I followed in cold envy the path she laid before me through the years. Like Satan before the fall, I came to hate the very nature of goodness, to fear its power. But during childhood I lacked the courage to rebellion, so I went underground to search for secret ways to be, and secret ways to lessen her. Sometimes, as directed, I took her behavior and copied it, then her things, and hid them, childish things for childish times. Her mug, the one with the red rabbits, her favorite doll, the rag doll with the yellow mouth, ribbons. I smiled to watch her search for them, and once to see her weep for the doll. I used her smile, sometimes. It didn't suit. Later, as adolescence stole upon us at our boarding school, I built a different, though still small, collection. Underwear, hair slides, stockings, insignificant items, rarely used, always in secret. In those years of fierce discovery, sometimes I would reach for myself and sigh, and often bank it down for a later conflagration. And so it began in small ways. Maybe it always does. Small thefts, small meannesses, malicious pleasures, minor cruelties. But what if I had been there before Elizabeth? What if I had been born first? Would she have been like me? What if Seth, the third son after Cain and Abel, had been first born? What if the Lord had been pleased by Cain's gifts? Would Cain have ever disturbed the sleeping monster in himself? I chose my habit. I had, you understand, no grand schemes, for I was not ambitious. I did not need public applause. I was spiritual by nature, a spiritual, malevolent creature. There are, I believe, many of us about. I was never promiscuous. I chose my lovers with intelligence, and, I believe, some originality. Though my victims were players on a board of my design, even my arbitrary, predatory swoops were accomplished with some artistry. I am beautiful, a statement of fact, a statement of power. I have dark hair and sallow, almost poreless skin. My deep-set brown eyes slant slightly upwards. My eyebrows, and this is much commented upon, do not arch, but seem to wing themselves across my brow. My nose is long, narrow, and straight. My mouth is strong, and even without lipstick my lips are red. It is a face in which the regularity of my features is made slightly exotic by the intensity of my coloring. She's a de Malta, my mother had often commented, referring to my father's Italian mother. I am of above average height, in fact only slightly less tall than Elizabeth. I have, however, a voluptuous figure. Physically, therefore, I was well equipped for the arena. But most crucially, for my future success, I had what amounted to genius in my deep knowingness of the beat, of the pounding rhythm of desire. As a young woman I had, of course, a different assemblage of Elizabeth's things, a small collection, silk underwear now, hair adornments, 2 of them gold, lipstick, shoes, high-heeled, black, other insignificant items. I still used them rarely, and still always in secret. After Oxford, where I read English, I joined a small book publishing house as an editorial assistant. I progressed steadily, as careful in hiding my wealth as I was subtle in the deployment of my beauty. Like all truly beautiful women, I dressed with extreme simplicity. I was aware that to emphasize for dramatic effect my already exotic coloring, or to shape clothes around my full curves of my body, would be to court vulgarity. Also, it would rob me of my element of surprise, and undermine the precepts of stealth, which are so essential to the successful disarming of prey. I had a small wardrobe of simple, elegant dresses, usually navy or white in the summer, and a soft cream, to which I am rather attached, and black in the winter, occasionally lifted by a touch of red. My accessories were extremely expensive, and always in perfect condition. but the classic nature of their design and the comparative dullness of their color deflected attention from the fact that my handbags, for example, could cost over a month's salary. This particular method of presentation reassured my female colleagues. The men I met at work soon found that their advances towards me elicited a response of such vague elusiveness that, initially attracted by the mysterious qualities surrounding me, they eventually retreated, baffled but with their pride still in place. Though my colleagues were not aware of it, and indeed the idea was only half formed, I considered the possibility of trying to build a small book publishing division within my father's magazine empire. I had a lot to learn. In London, I lived during the week in an elegant flat in a cul-de-sac behind Harrods. It was discreet. Though clearly implying that I did not live on my salary alone, it avoided any overt statement of my financial position. From this base, I pursued a social life that, by careful manipulation, ran parallel to that of Elizabeth. I believed myself to be in control. Elizabeth was striking, not beautiful. The promise of early childhood years of golden hair and fine features had faded into a pale attractiveness that she seemed unwilling to redeem in any way. It was her height, inherited from her father Oliver, that made an impact. She was long-limbed and slender. Her shoulders were of a slightly masculine strength, which the severity of her clothes seemed to emphasize. If mine was a wardrobe picked with care for a purpose only I could comprehend, hers seemed to be genuinely the result of a fastidious cleanliness, a high purity that almost festered the eye. She dressed in white shirts of cotton or silk, with jeans or tailored trousers. In the evening she wore velvet or silk jackets or longish silk skirts, which she seemed to wrap sarong-like around her long waist. During the day, her hair was worn back from her face and held by a barrette, whatever. In the evening, it was pleated into a simple chignon. It was a style that remained unchanged through the years, as almost identical new items replaced the old. After art school, where Elizabeth enjoyed a modest success, she lived in an enormous studio flat in Kensington, where she painted. Obsessed with sky, she was unfashionable, rarely exhibited, and, in my opinion, totally without talent. Her friends were few and mostly artists. However, she retained from her school days a close relationship with the Bathurst family, respected international bankers. Maria Bathurst regularly invited Elizabeth to Paris and to Loire, where the family had a chateau. Elizabeth accepted those invitations with almost childlike joy. The hospitality she returned by inviting Maria Bathurst for occasional visits to Lexington. These visits were much appreciated by Maria, who seemed to love Lexington and its famous lake for its mystery, she once said. Lexington is, from one perspective, a hidden secret house. It is approached by a winding, climbing drive through woods. Then a sudden clearing, and shockingly Lexington, washed red, commands the hill. Long, open parkland falls gently through tree-shadowed acres into water light. Lexington, the house and lake into which over time we poured so much of our lives, had been acquired by my grandfather in the first flush of his spectacular business success, the ultimate chess game, as he described it. He had bought a small magazine publishing company with well-established, though not very profitable, titles. He moved the company out of its enormous old-fashioned building in central London, and thereby realized the hidden asset he had seen all along. The property, with a considerable fortune in the bank from the sale of the building, within 3 years he had closed 6 week magazines, transformed others into market leaders and successfully launched 2 more. He had created a publishing empire, Alpha Publishing, so called because my grandmother's name was Alexa, and they had called their 2 daughters Astrid and Eileen. All alphas had been this little joke. After her husband died, my grandmother, either from grief or from joy, had Lexington's grey stone washed red. My grandfather and my father returned from London each weekend and pursued male pastimes of fishing, hunting, cards. Weekends at Lexington were full of male odors, of an alien pitch of laughter that as a child had thrilled me. Even the color of Lexington had seemed to change. Its red hue seemed daring and triumphant. During its female week, it had seemed to be blood red, with black somewhere clotted in its depths. I had never been interested in handsome men. This is not because I believe that they are necessarily vain, nor indeed that they are incapable, as is often implied, of loving deeply. No. I know that nature is not all bountiful, and having endowed beauty, it will almost certainly not feel the necessity to be generous with other qualities. On a summer's day, when Elizabeth was in her late 20s, into Lexington walked the reason for the increased frequency of her visits to France, Hubert Bathus. He strode across the lawn towards my garden chair, his smiling, courtly face a veritable topography of the balances and planes of light and shade that made a man handsome. It is true that it was with a minimum of originality I intended on the seduction of Elizabeth's lover, a plan conceived in a split second of his arrival. This banality would not in any way lessen the pain she would suffer. I smiled at him through the sunlight and held my hand out for his perfect bow, and for the kiss on the hand which, as he was a gentleman, avoided final contact. Elizabeth speaks of you with such admiration. I have so longed to meet you. You're too kind, I replied. Too kind? Can anyone be too kind? My too clever weekend guest, Helen, now spoke. You're taking the phrase too literally, Hubert. Sometimes in England we say you're too kind and means something entirely different. Hubert looked at me, puzzled. I am sure I got Ruth's meaning correct. How clumsy I sound. My English is stilted. No, your English is charming, I said. Ah, yes, charming. Now, I do understand what the English mean when they say charming. I understand the nuance. He laughed. Elizabeth smiled gently at his little triumph. Hubert may come to live in London for 3 or 4 years, she said. Really? Why? I asked. We have established a branch of the bank in London. I will stay for a time to develop it before returning to Paris. Do you think you'll like living in England? Oh, yes, I'm certain of that. He shot a look of affection towards Elizabeth. Have you ever lived in London before? I asked. Lived? No, but I have visited often. I love London. Its theatre particularly. It's the best in the world. But now I seem to flatter, you know. We like being flattered. Helen was now smiling at him too. Her cleverness had been put to one side as an inappropriate accessory in the face of his charm. Elizabeth was entranced. But why did she interest him? Did she perhaps have a lust for her soul? What a potent weapon it is when observed with the clarity of vision required to appreciate it. How serious were they about each other, Elizabeth? Very. Hubert? Ruth? Startled, I turned towards my mother. Ruth, dear, you seem lost in thought. We should move to the terrace, darling. Lunch is ready. I watched Elizabeth and Hubert walk towards the house. He had his arm around her waist, and she turned towards him and gazed at him as if to light his path, even on a summer day. I walked after them. My shadow fell across them. They stopped and turned toward me, smiling. I placed myself on the other side of Hubert. I hope we'll see you at Lexington at the weekends when you come to live in England. Hubert starts next month, Elizabeth said. You've bought somewhere to live in London? No, there is a company flat in Mayfair. I shall stay there, at least for the immediate future. We had arrived at the house. Lunch was being served on the terrace. Folds of white linen, an obsession of my mother, whose linen cupboard had an almost alpine purity, fell from the oblong table onto the grey stone of the terrace. I watched Hubert eat. He was full of appetite, but discreet, an interesting tension. Elizabeth smiled with pleasure as he complimented my father on the wine, which he drank in considerable quantities, though not to excess. He goes just to the edge, I thought, but no further. Elizabeth toyed with her food. She drank virtually nothing. Elizabeth never goes to the edge. In her paintings, for example, there is no danger, no excitement. As if he read my thought, Hubert spoke. I admire Elizabeth's painting very much. She is committed to beauty. She is very much in the French tradition. We do not celebrate ugliness just because it shocks. You understand? He turned to me. Yes, indeed I do. I tried to sound diplomatic, but great art has always shocked. N'est-ce pas? Yes, but Elizabeth does not claim to be a great artist, Ruth. She does, however, have a true eye, and in time she may surprise you all, I have a feeling about. Oh, Hubert, please. Blushing, Elizabeth interjected. It's simple, really. Painting is all I'm good at, and even at that I only have a small talent. But it makes me very happy, and my small successes encourage me to continue with my enchantment, Hubert offered. Well, sighed Helen, you make an enchanted couple. God knows there aren't many around. Ruth, where's Dominic? Asked my mother. When he was not asking me to marry him, I found Dominic useful company on occasional weekends at Lexington. He's in America, Mother, giving a series of lectures at Berkeley. I replied. Dominic's subject, mathematics, was such that it rendered any conversation concerning his work impossible. All inquiries were full of dread that he might be tempted to explain. He read modern novels avidly. Most of them he loathed. It gives me something to talk about, he often said laughingly. Yes, he had his charms, but with me he had strayed onto the wrong path. One of these days I would have to lead him to an exit. I hoped that he would leave with grace. And with that, we are on chapter 6. Already. All right. So, tell me what you guys think about the book so far in the comments below. And I will see you all next time. Bye.